Hey there, Screaming Ghostface fans, how's it going? I'm your host Douglas here at Drownboy Productions, bringing you my review of Scream 6. I just got back from the movies and I am excited to talk about this movie, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys, we're not doing a spoiler-free review. This is going to be spoiler-heavy. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, do not watch this yet, or just don't watch it at all. Unless, of course, you don't care about being spoiled, in which case, sit back and relax. Now that you've had a fair warning, let's go ahead and dive right into the review. Let's start off with the acting. I feel like everyone in this movie who has reprised their role did a much better job as their character. One of the best, in my opinion, is Sam. I think that she felt maybe a little bit flat in Scream 5. However, in this one, she has a much bigger emotional range, and that could be due to her trauma from the previous film, or just Melissa Barrera getting better at acting. I'm not really sure, but I liked her performance a lot more in this movie than in Scream 5. Then we have Tara, Jenna Ortega, of course. Jenna Ortega is currently one of the biggest actresses in Hollywood. Many people have already labeled her a Scream Queen due to Wednesday, and I think she had a wonderful performance in there. But in this movie, I feel like her character was a little bit sidelined from having much development. Outside of her just wanting to live her life and go to college, there's not a whole lot with Tara to be said. And I mean, she did a fine job. You know, she's acting her ass off, even in scenes where they're hiding in the bodega. And Jenna Ortega is like full-on weeping tears, makeup running. But if you look at Sam, Sam's pretty cool, calm, and collected. Like, she's not too worried about the fact that, you know, they're being held at gunpoint essentially by Ghostface. Not bad acting, but overall it just didn't feel like they gave her character a lot of development. Not that they didn't give her a lot to do, because for the most part, most of our group is kind of together when all this stuff is going down. As for the rest of the core four, we have Mindy and Chad. And I think Chad, Mason Gooding, really stepped up his game in this movie. He did a great job. He was already fun in the last one, but in this one, even more charismatic, just a better character in general. I really like Chad. I don't want to see Chad die. In fact, he's probably one of my favorite characters out of anything from 4, 5, and now. He's just a good character. Then we have Mindy. Now, in the last movie, I really enjoyed Mindy. In this one, there were a couple of things that they took her character direction in that I didn't enjoy as much. One of which I do consider to be unrealistic is one of the first lines, if not the first line she says in the movie. Whenever we're introduced to a college party that's going on, you see Mindy and her new girlfriend, Annika, I think it was, and they're both staring at someone who I believe is wearing a gay pride Ghostface mask. It's only shown for like a split second, but Annika says, you know, doesn't this bother you? After all, you were at a house party and you were stabbed by someone wearing a Ghostface mask, and you're at a house party now and there's someone wearing a Ghostface mask. And Mindy Meeks, niece of Randy Meeks' response to this is, I kind of think of it like being struck by lightning. What are the chances it happens to the same person twice? Which really, like, instantly, I was like, hold on. We have a self-proclaimed horror movie fan, you know, they've picked up the torch of Randy Meeks, they understand the genre, they seem to, you know, really understand the Stab franchise, plus it happened to one of their family members. I don't see how they could say that, being that in many horror films, people are stalked multiple times, especially if you make it to the sequel. Or even if you want to be as specific as, you know, the Stab franchise, which was based off of the real-life slayings, including her uncle, Randy. Randy died because he was stalked more than once. Lightning struck twice with him. So I don't know, that seemed a bit odd to me. The one-liner was kind of weird. Outside of that, our supporting cast, for the most part, does a pretty good job. Our new character, Ethan Landry, I feel like kind of doesn't do a whole lot, but stand around going, I'm not the killer, I'm not the killer, I'm not the killer. I'm trying to think, really, what did they even share about his character other than he rooms with Chad, he's kind of a part of the friend group, and he had Econ. Then we have Sam and Tara and maybe Mindy's roommate. I don't know if Mindy lived there, but at least Sam and Tara's roommate, which is Quinn, which is the daughter of one of the police officers who's investigating all the Ghostface murders going on. And I mean, I guess they do a fine job. And it felt like the actress for Quinn was a little bit flat. However, Dermot, I forget his last name, who played Officer Bailey, he did a pretty good job. I enjoyed his acting. And then we have Courtney Cox, who I guess she was just Gale Weathers in this movie. I mean, she had one decent little chase sequence, and outside of that, she's just showing up, doing her same old Gale Weathers nonsense. writing books again, and that was something that kind of bugged me about her character direction. So Scream 1, 2, 3, and 4, in my opinion, Gale was kind of just a trash person. Like, I've never understood why so many people just really like Gale. Her only, like, fun character traits, in my opinion, was really, like, her whole thing back and forth with Dewey. So without Dewey being there, there's just really not a whole lot to do with her. But at the end of Scream 5, it seemed like there was a huge character shift. Like, she learned her lesson, and she wasn't going to be writing books about the murders anymore. She was going to write a happy book about how Dewey saved the town. And instead, completely reversed that. She didn't do that. She did just write a book on the murders. Just why? Like, they just made Gale even more irredeemable. And even more so, spoiler alert, yet again, they don't kill her in this movie, and they don't make her Ghostface. And I feel like at this point, one of the two, like, come on. They even go as far in this movie to point out how it actually would have made sense to some degree to have Gale be the killer, at least more than anybody else, and yet they still haven't done it. So, in my opinion, unless you're just using her to attach her name to the films to get people to return so that there is legacy cast, there's just really no point to have Gale returning. And I guess before we move on, we'll go ahead and address this, even though she's not in the movie. Neve Campbell. Of course, she did not reprise her role as Sidney in this film, and they said it was because of a monetary dispute. The way that they address Sidney's character in this movie is just a name drop a couple of times, one of which seemed like, maybe I'm wrong on this, but it seemed like it just got really quiet whenever Gale says this. So it's almost like they faded the music out when she says, like, Sidney deserves her happy ending. So I don't know if that one line, she deserves her happy ending, is going to be like, you know, her write-off from the franchise, or if she will return in some supporting cast way or a full role again. But if I had to guess, being that this movie is probably going to make a ton of money, I don't think they're going to really try to get Neve back. In my opinion, I mean, you have to try to come up with some reason that somebody wants to go after Sidney Prescott again, and that may just become a little bit too repetitive. It seems like it was already getting that way. I'm fine with Neve having her happy ending. Or Sidney. I keep saying Neve. It's Sidney Prescott. But she is alive, so I mean, who knows? Maybe with Scream 7 they'll bring her back. I've heard rumors that they're possibly trying to have a much larger role for her in Scream 7, and they just left her out of this one entirely, but time will tell. In my opinion, it seems more likely that instead of paying that money, they'll probably invest that in more set pieces, more effects, you know, other actors even, who knows. So with the acting being addressed, let's go ahead and move on to the story. Overall, felt like a pretty fun one up until the very end. I do have a few problems with the ending, but of course we'll get to that. We had one of the coolest openings in a Scream film in a very long time. We don't just see the classic opening kill, but we see that transform into Ghostface unmasking themselves, kind of walking amongst everyone as if nothing had just happened, conversing with our main cast yet again as if nothing just happened, which at that point, man, I was feeling so hopeful. I'm like, are we really gonna get to see a Scream movie from the perspective of the killer, or even more so, where we know who at least one of the killers is the entire time, but the cast doesn't know? But nope, we don't get that. Ghostface gets killed by another Ghostface, who then delivers a one-liner which I kind of found a little cringy. After this, we have Sam talking to her therapist. She explains to her therapist that not only is she the daughter of Billy Loomis, but she actually kind of enjoyed killing Richie. He's like, I am not equipped to handle this. See you later. And she pretty much goes on her way, heads back to her apartment where her roommate Quinn is currently catching a D date, if you know what I'm saying. Even though it doesn't show anything, I don't think that there is any explicit nudity of any kind in the Scream franchise. This is probably the most explicit sexual content that's been in a Scream movie thus far. Other than the implied act between Sidney and Billy, I can't really think of anything else. I mean, this doesn't show anything either, but you get to hear sound, so I guess it's a bit more explicit. Not that that's super noteworthy, but I guess it was just interesting to point out because usually there's not a whole lot of sexuality at all in the Scream movies. Sam wants to know where Tara is, finds out she's at a party. We head to said party, which is where we're introduced to Mindy and her new girlfriend. Tara's gonna hook up with some random guy. Chad doesn't approve of it. They get into a fight. Sam shows up, tases said guy in the balls. They leave. On the way back to the apartment, Sam gets harassed by some random drunk chicks who end up calling her a psycho, accusing her of being a murderer, and throw, Diet cherry Coke, I think, on her, something like that. She gets pissed off, fights back a little bit, they catch it on camera. And you know, now that I think about it, people already think that of her, but I don't think they know that she's the daughter of Billy Loomis. Maybe I'm wrong on that one, but I'm guessing since she told her therapist in private, that's not public information. Anyways, they make it back to the apartment, and whenever they do, the cute guy from across the way, who was his name, Danny, just some guy who lives in the adjacent building, and you know, Sam and he look at each other and think lustful thoughts. And he shows up, they start making out, and we find out they've pretty much already been in a relationship, but they've kept it private. And I don't know about you all, but from what I got from Danny's character, and really this is one of the only like pieces of character development he gets in the movie is in this scene, he kind of feels like he's supposed to be the new Dewey. I mean, Danny, Dewey, the way that he's dressed kind of, he's the protective figure for our main character. And overall, he just seems to be a really good guy. He's very understanding of Sam and all the stuff that she's been through the entire time. He's like, look, no, I totally get it. Don't trust me. Don't trust anybody. I'll give you your space. And that's, you know, multiple times that they are kind of like, look, man, you could be Ghostface. And he's like, no, I get it. I get it. It's totally fine. Anyways, the crew upstairs ends up seeing a newscast where it's been announced that there was this brutal Ghostface slaying. And this is the slaying that took place, you know, the first killings in the movie. It was Greg and Jason. Upon seeing that it has to do with Ghostface and it's as close to them as it is, someone that was in the same class as them, Sam's immediately like, look, we gotta get the fuck out of here. Chad and Mindy pretty much agree, but Tara doesn't. She's more concerned about her college education than her life. Which, I mean, part of her character development in this movie is pretty much that she's not gonna live in fear. She's not gonna let what happened to her control her future. She's not gonna do that. She's just gonna live as if nothing happened. Or so she thinks that is. She wants to stay. Everybody else wants to leave, but the decision's made for them because they get a call from Officer Bailey telling them that Sam's ID, and I don't know if it was her personal ID or student ID, either way, it was planted at the scene of the crime. So she's wanted for questioning and has to come down to the station immediately. Well, as soon as they leave their apartment to head down to the station, they're pretty much immediately attacked by Ghostface. But not before Sam receives a call from Richie Kirsch. Now, when I saw this, I was like, oh man, this has got to be interesting. Either she's having some sort of mental problems because, you know, seeing her dead father. Maybe she's seeing her dead boyfriend. Someone's cloning phones and maybe even using simulated voices with AI technology, somewhat kind of like what happened in Scream 3. Though I gotta say, like modern day, that's more realistic now than ever. If they don't use some kind of AI generated Scream 3 voice changer type thing in the next movie, that just seems like a missed opportunity. Or the killer has Richie's phone, because we know good and damn well that out of any Ghostface killer, that boy dead. Either way, she gets the call, they're attacked, they shove Ghostface, I think, into a pile of garbage and into a bike, run into the nearest bodega, and at this point, this is going to be where it really splits people. A lot of people love Ghostface with a shotgun, a lot of people don't like it. Personally, whenever I saw the photo, I didn't like it. Whenever I saw a little bit more from the trailer, I was like, okay, I kind of like it. Then when I saw it in the movie, kind of didn't like it again. Hear me out, I have my reasons. So when I initially saw the photo of Ghostface, you know, action holding out the shotgun with one arm, I didn't like it because it looked a little cheesy, and also mainly just because there were specific rules that were set in place for Ghostface by Head of Fun World, RJ, you know, the guy who helped pretty much control Ghostface, and Wes Craven himself. I don't remember all the rules, but I think it went a little something like this. Ghostface does not use guns. Ghostface does not sexually assault people. Ghostface does not torture people, and Ghostface does not behead people. And that last one specifically, I believe, was because they didn't want Ghostface doing anything that was done by the Taliban. Or at least that was the ruling or reasoning around that time period. And pretty much 2 of those rules are broken in this movie because we do start out with a beheading, of course, Greg in the fridge, and also Ghostface does use a gun. As for how the gun's used, I mean, the guy alerts Ghostface that he's got a gun pointed at his back instead of just shooting him for some reason. Ghostface ducks the shot. The guy then, instead of using, you know, the giant mirror that's in the corner of every convenience store or grocery store so that they can see what's going on in all the aisles, in case you're shoplifting or stabbing someone or whatever may be going on, taking a shit in the aisles, I don't know. Yeah, he doesn't use that, and neither does Ghostface after he gets the gun. They just completely ignore that. And it just felt a bit weird, especially once Ghostface got the shotgun, because there's only one exit in this building, and that's out the front door. The other door is locked. They don't have the keys. It seems weird that in this movie, and a lot of other movies, when Ghostface has a knife, they will charge aggressively headfirst into somebody who has a gun, who's well armed. No problem at all. But once Ghostface gets a gun, now they're tiptoeing around? I don't know, just, if we wanted to go like full-on aggression, truly scary, I say go all the way. Have them get the shotgun and use it to kill a couple of other people trying to get to our main characters, and then they try to use it on our main characters and they're out of shells or something. I don't know. It wasn't a bad scene for tension building, but it just didn't make a lot of sense logically to me, but who am I to say? I haven't been in that scenario. Anyways, after this, the girls go to leave and the police show up. They turn around, Ghostface went out the back door with that lucky set of keys and left a mask behind. And here we have another issue I have with the movie. As far as the weathering of the mask is concerned, of course these Ghostface masks would not weather like that. They're not going to dry up and crack and flake and peel, do anything like that. They're not painted. It's solid cast vinyl. On top of that, the age difference between them and the amount of weathering that they have seemed very odd. But the biggest glaring problem amongst it is they did use the standard EU mask for every killer mask. Now, I don't know about you guys, but as a Fun World and Ghostface fan, how cool would it have been to truly see every version of the killer mask represented on screen? Maybe not the K&B because, you know, it was a knockoff of the Fun World mask in the first place, but all the other ones. Obviously for Scream 5, 4, and 3, you're going to have the EU. But for Scream 2 and Scream 1, you're going to have the Gen 1, the Gen 2, and maybe even the MK RDS mask. Seeing those masks unweathered or even yellowed or bloody would have been much cooler in my opinion than the cracked versions of the EU, although I will say, stylistically, it is a really cool look. As far as like it not making sense, I mean, you could even argue with Halloween, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends, that mask would not look like that, you know, it wouldn't rot like that, and especially by Halloween Ends, it'd be falling apart. So stylistically, I like it. I would have rather seen the other masks though, but my other problem with the masks, and guys, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about this, but it seemed like with the first killing, which was our Ghostfaces that got killed in the beginning, they left Richie and Amber's mask. I know they at least said it was Richie's, but I'm not sure if they said it was Amber's. But then in the bodega, they had one mask that had Jill and Charlie's DNA in it. For Roman, we only have one mask. Then for Miss Loomis and Mickey, we had one mask, I'm pretty certain. And then we have Billy and Stu with their own individual masks, of course. They explained to us that in the Ghostface shrine, there's 9 costumes representing each killer. Each one of them had a mask on the display, all the masks were stolen, and that they were leaving the masks behind, counting down to something. But what are they counting down to? But to me, it seems like they weren't leaving masks per killer, but masks per massacre. Like one mask was left for the event of the last slaying, which was Richie and Amber. Then one mask was left for Scream 4 slayings, Jill and Charlie. One mask for Roman, obviously. One for Mickey and Miss Loomis, I guess. And then an individual mask for both Billy and Stu. Now look, I'm not saying that the DNA of both killers couldn't be inside of one mask. It's not like they specifically had, you know, oh, Miss Loomis, this is my mask only. Oh, Mickey, this is my mask only. It wasn't like that, I'm sure. But at the same time, there should have been more masks represented, at least 9 of them. But we don't get to see those versions on the shrine, off the shrine, or at all. So I don't know if they even made those, or if they are just inferring that one mask was used by both killers in each slaying. Anyways, I'm sure that's something most of you won't care about unless you're a massive mask nerd like me, but that is something I thought about quite a bit while watching the movie. Anywhom, they're questioned about the mask. After that, they're told that they're persons of interest, so they can't leave the state. They have to stick around. Then Kirby shows up, which as far as Hayden's acting for Kirby, I don't think she did a terrible job, but I think that you could tell it had been a while since she had acted, and I don't really feel like they did a whole lot with Kirby's character in this one. Other than her being here to be a red herring, she didn't really offer a whole lot. And I really like Kirby from Scream 4. She was one of my favorite characters in that movie. Anyways, the crew heads back to the apartment where they all talk a little bit and coined the name Core 4, so our new main 4 cast members are known as the Core 4. And during this scene, we get one of my favorite sequences in the film. We have Danny, Loverboy, across the way. He can see that Ghostface is in the apartment with them, but none of them know. Ghostface is in Quinn's room, and he's essentially witnessing, you know, kind of what they saw Olivia go through, except for this time not quite the same payoff. He tries waving them down to let them know Ghostface is in the apartment. They don't see. Tries calling them. They don't answer. Until they end up hearing some different kind of screaming coming from the next room. Quinn's body is then thrust out onto Annika and Mindy. Ghostface comes out charging, immediately starts attacking people, stabs, I think, Mindy first, and then Annika. At this point, Sam tries to fight back. She goes for a knife. All the knives have been taken, so she grabs the knife block and smacks Ghostface in the head, who surprisingly does not get a concussion or a bruise at all. They go into the bedroom to hide from Ghostface. He's still trying to break in. They realize that the other door's open. Mindy tries to go shut it. We see that Quinn's boyfriend at the time, I think Paul maybe it was sliced up in the bathtub. And at this point, everybody's pretty much trapped in the bathroom. So Danny, being resourceful as ever, having a giant ladder in his apartment for some reason, sticks the ladder from his apartment through the window directly across into their bathroom window. And Sam crawls across first. Then Mindy crawls across, and then Annika tries to make it. She gets about halfway, and Ghostface shows up. And this one just felt like really cruel. Like, I would hate to be anybody in that situation, you know, other than, I guess, Ghostface. Then after that, Annika gets shaken off of the ladder and unfortunately splatters onto a dumpster below. Alas, ye character with no last name, we barely knew you at all. So, after this, the police show up yet again. We have Officer Bailey go in, and he comes out crying because his daughter's dead. Now both of his kids are dead. And I gotta say, right about this point, I started really suspecting that Officer Bailey might be in on this whole thing. Anyways, Danny shows up to try and console Sam. Pretty much says, look, I get it. You can't trust anybody, not even me. Do what you gotta do. And I can't really remember what happens directly after this. If all of the paparazzi shows up, including Gale Weathers. But we get the classic, somebody taking a shot at Gale scene. Of course, Sam doesn't nail it, but Tara does. I want to say they go back to the police station. After that, they leave. Gale shows up. She's all, you know, hey, how's it going, Gale Weathers? They immediately go for the throwing a punch at Gale move. Sam misses. Tara doesn't. It's here that we find out that they completely retconned all the character development for Gale at the end of the last movie. And no, she did not learn her lesson. She's just still the same bitch, doing the same things. And yeah, we don't really like her, except I guess she shows up with a little bit of a lead for us. So at this point, she takes our main cast to the shrine. And this is where we're introduced to the shrine. I gotta say, the shrine is pretty cool. And if we don't get a walk through the shrine in special features, my disappointment will be endless. Endless. I mean, not everything in there is 100% correct. Some things were definitely like full-on recreations, not even close to the originals, but a lot of those things were pretty close. I gotta say, I noticed a few pieces that should have been in the shrine that were not, and I actually happen to own one of them here that you guys haven't seen yet, but when you do, I think you'll agree. It's at this point where we learn that there were 9 masks. Of course, they were taken. We get that whole exposition drop. Our characters kind of hang out here for a little while before devising a scheme to actually kill Ghostface, or so they think. They're going to lure him out into public so that they can catch him. And this is kind of like a throwback to Scream 2 with the whole College Plaza scene, the one where Randy meets his unfortunate demise, and this is actually kind of brought up by Mindy, because Ethan, Chad, and Mindy are all sitting in an Enterprise van with Kirby while they're staking out the whole situation. Officer Bailey's got an earpiece in, and he's walking the park, making sure everything goes correctly. So they come up with a plan to catch Ghostface. They're gonna lure him out in the public. However, Gale isn't allowed on this mission, so she has to sit this one out. Of course, Sam does get a call from Richie, aka Ghostface, who tells them, oh, you think really? Like, you really think you would get me this easy? No, I'm one step ahead of you. Kirby traces the call. They find out it's on West 96th Street, I want to say, is what it was. Which, of course, is where Gale lives. So Tara steals a cop car, and Sam hops in. They go to try and save Gale, and sure enough, Ghostface is after Gale. We see Gale get called by Ghostface for the first time, and look, when we saw this in the trailer, I think everybody pretty much thought Gale's gonna meet her maker in this movie. Most people who are getting that call are not gonna make it out alive. And Gale's made it out of so much already, maybe her number's up. So then Ghostface kills Gale's nameless boyfriend in the background, and they continue the conversation until Ghostface throws his body through their bookshelf? Entertainment center, whatever piece that was. And then we get a pretty awesome shot of Ghostface stepping into the spotlight and wiping the blade. We then get a pretty spectacular Gale and Ghostface chase sequence. I won't lie, this one was pretty awesome, especially her fumbling to try and open up that gun safe. Gale gets the gun, thinks that she killed Ghostface, she doesn't. They end up on the phone together, and then one of my favorite Ghostface phone call moments, she's like, "Hold please," hangs up, and then immediately calls him back, turns around, and shoots. So well done. The only thing is, yet again, approaching the killer while you have a gun. The point of the gun is that you have the distance advantage. So, of course, Gale gets stabbed a few times in some pretty serious places, and she still continues to run and to fight. And I mean, I don't know, like, I kind of feel like Gale should have met her maker here for a couple of different reasons. For one, you kind of made her character irredeemable with the choices that you've made with this movie. I feel like it's going to be really hard to give her a redemption arc after so many attempts. And what do you really do with Gale from here? Other than just having her be another legacy cast member, I feel like Ghostface said on the phone, either make her the killer or kill her. But thanks to Sam and Tara showing up before Ghostface can deal the final blow, Gale does miraculously survive. After this, I think it was Tara, specifically, comes up with the plan to trap Ghostface and execute them. Somebody watched Halloween 2018. Officer Bailey agrees. He's like, "Look, I know the exact place. Just take him to the Ghostface shrine. We're gonna make that shit happen." So then our characters have to get in the subway and make their way to the shrine. And this enters another amazing sequence in my opinion. Ethan and Mindy end up on their train car while Danny, Sam, Tara, and Chad all end up on a car together. And the tensions are high for everyone. They know that Ghostface has to be lurking somewhere right around the corner, or more than likely is in the train car with them. It doesn't help that Ghostface masks, as it says earlier in the film, are having a boom in sales, so now they're everywhere. The entire sequence is done very well, very good tension building. I think it was a lot of fun, probably not too inaccurate from what would actually happen if you were in a New York sub and you got stabbed. And I don't know, like, little thing I have to talk about that at the end. There were a few changes in the movie, a few things I noticed different from the trailer we'll talk about at the end. But one thing that is the same as the trailer is that we do get to see Mindy stabbed in the train. Ethan ends up helping her make it to some paramedics so that she can get some proper medical care, and I believe he just heads on his way to meet with the rest of the group while they all make it to the shrine. When they make it there, they're greeted by Kirby, who says they just cleared the building before they made it there. So that almost kind of gives us another little bit of like a red herring feel. Like, oh, don't worry, we're completely safe. I just cleared the entire building. Oh, well, what are we going to do for weapons? Oh, one gun. I keep it. Just me. I have a badge. Then the entire group splits up because that always works well in these situations. And Sam gets a phone call from Officer Bailey telling her that, hey, stay away from Kirby. She's actually a lunatic. She snapped after the events of the 2011 stabbing, and she started spiraling in the past few months, and she got fired from the FBI, and she's gone rogue. Something along those lines. Basically, Kirby's the killer is what he's trying to say. Cut back to Tara and Chad, who are hanging out together by the snack bar, having a little romantic action. They're having a good time, having some great character development when Ghostface cuts that short and stabs Tara in the back. Chad immediately springs into action and does a pretty good job of fighting back against Ghostface until a second Ghostface shows up. And I think, maybe I'm wrong on this one, I think that this is the first time that we've ever seen two masked Ghostface killers on screen at the same time, especially going after this same victim. Chad gets stabbed a crazy amount of times. I have no clue how many, didn't even try to count. I figured that that's it. You know, they gave him some great character development in this one and they're going to kill Mason Gooding off, but surprisingly not. They make it back out to the shrine. Kirby's there, but she's bleeding from her head like she's been hit in the head, which Ghostface got hit in the head with a frying pan when he was fighting Gale. I forgot to mention that too, but a lot of head injuries that somehow just didn't bruise or didn't injure. I guess the padding in these hoods really does do wonders. Kirby's got a head injury, but nobody else does, and we kind of get this whole standoff between, is it Kirby? Is it Officer Bailey? Kirby's got a really wild look in her eyes, but of course, it's Officer Bailey. He shoots Kirby a couple of times. Ghostface joins him on one side, Ghostface joins him on the other, and now it's time for the unmasking and monologue sequence. And here's where the movie took a bit of a downturn for me. It seemed like with a lot of stuff in this film, they really wanted to try and break the mold. They wanted to be different. There was even that line in the trailer that was absent from the final cut of the movie, like, oh, I'm built different, Gale, I'm different than the others. No, like, that's not in the final cut of the movie, and ultimately, I mean, the motive ends up being the same as Scream 2. The killers are Officer Bailey, Ethan, and of course, Quinn. Quinn didn't really seem to have much character development in the movie to me other than just liking to have sex and she's their roommate. That's about it. Ethan was just the red herring the entire time, pretty much standing there going, I'm not Ghostface, I'm not Ghostface, and he was Ghostface. So like Scream 2, we have a family seeking revenge. That's what this is. Scream 2 was Miss Loomis looking for good old-fashioned revenge. You killed my son. Regardless of the killing spree that he went on, I'll forgive him because he's my child, but you killed him in self-defense, now you must be punished. That's exactly what this movie is, except for it's the entire family pretty much has the same motive. It's a brother, a sister, and a father, instead of just the mother. As for the final masks that were not left behind, we have Ethan wearing Miss Loomis's and Mickey's mask. We have, what's her name? Quinn. I don't even know if I've called her something else, but Quinn. She's wearing Stu's mask because he's her favorite. And then Officer Bailey has Billy's mask, which he gives back to Sam. We find out that the shrine is Richie's personal collection of memorabilia from the murders, so it is a true crime collection, and that all came from the evidence lockers obtained by his father, Officer Bailey. So he purchased or obtained all these items for his son to build this collection, but the actual location for the shrine he purchased under the name or rented under the name for Greg and Jason Carvey. Well, we don't know Greg's last name, but you get the point. The kids from earlier that were Ghostface, he put it under their name like it was going to frame them, but if he was the one that got all these pieces out of evidence, or even if he got a close friend to get them out of evidence for him, wouldn't it lead back to him? Anyways, this is Richie's Collection. All the drawings that are in there that people were wondering, what are these drawings from? Those are Richie's Fan Art Pieces, I guess you could say. What's being projected in the theater is Richie's fan films, and I guess like YouTube stuff, something like that. At first, whenever I saw this recreation of Stab, yet another recreation of Stab, I'm like, did they reshoot it again? But no, that's supposed to be a Stab fan film. Essentially, the plan was to try and frame Sam the entire time. All the online postings about Sam being the murderer or being behind everything were all written by that family. It was character assassination. Then after that, they planned to get her in costume and kill her and have her be found there, I guess, and they just weren't going to be involved at all. I don't think it was a situation where they were going to be victims. Quinn has basically faked her own death at this point. Ethan's there, I guess, but Officer Bailey was just going to stumble upon it all, or he was going to be the one to show up to the crime scene. It seems a little bit convoluted. Their plan doesn't seem like it would work in any way. Another thing is, like, after they become Ghostface, and this is always something that kind of happens in the Scream movies, everybody becomes, like, really unhinged and crazy. They'll act normal or semi-normal in their friend group the entire time, and then they act really unhinged at the end. And I don't know if this is the situation, but to me, it reads as many people trying to draw from the energy that Matthew Lillard had as Stu Macher, and people are trying to act like Stu. Like, a lot of Officer Bailey's line deliveries after he's revealed as a Ghostface feels like he's more so trying to imitate Stu Macher. But one of the things that worked about Stu's energy for me is that he was always kind of wacky, zany, and crazy throughout the entire movie, making him seem like he's a character that would be involved with the murders. And then at the end, once it's revealed that he is, he just amps that up to 10. With most of these other people in the Scream films, it's like they're normal, fine, no real hint of any kind of, mental break or craziness, and then they just act like a wacko the second that they've unmasked. Either way, their monologue's cut short by a brick to the mouth via Tara. So then Quinn's on the ground, Kirby's made it back to her feet, she shoots at Officer Bailey, I think she misses. Ethan then tries to attack Kirby, ends up stabbing her, then Sam tries to fight him, I think. Ends up taking the knife out of Kirby and stabbing him with it a few times. Then Sam tries to fight Sam, ends up taking the knife out of Kirby and stabbing him with it a few times. Then Sam tries to fight him, I think. Ends up taking the knife out of Kirby and stabbing him with it a few times. Then Sam tries to fight him, I think. Ends up taking the knife out of Kirby So Kirby's already been shot and stabbed a few times in this movie, and I think she gets stabbed pretty much in the same spot as in Scream 4. Sam and Tara make it up to the second floor and they're trying to escape, but when they do, Quinn comes up there, Bailey shoots at Tara, causing her to slightly fall off the edge. Sam catches her arm. Of course, there's the whole let me go scene. She ends up giving Tara a knife so that she can jump down onto Ethan, who's waiting before her. She does catch a knife in the gut, but then she sends him a knife right into the mouth. Really brutal, and gives it a nice twist. Sam then ends up shooting Quinn, and Officer Bailey's behind her. He, who has a gun, runs at her while pointing a gun at her. She charges him, and they both go over the edge. Officer Bailey wakes up, and of course, Sam is nowhere to be seen. So he goes looking for her, gets a phone call. Of course, it's with the Ghostface voice changer, and it's Sam messing with him. At this point, she has taken the robe and taken the mask, and she's all dressed in her birthright. Sam ends up getting the better of him and stabbing him many times, and right before she's about to deliver the final blow, Tara shows up and is like, "Really?" And then gives her that look of, actually go ahead, because Sam gives this whole monologue about, you think I'm a murderer, you think I'm a killer, but I'm better than that. But you have killed a few people. You are a murderer. You are a killer. Maybe, not a cold-blooded killer, but you are a killer. Anyways, he thinks that he's going to get to survive, but she's like, JK, and just stabs him right through the eye socket, thus ending the spree of these three ghost faces. Well, except for old Ethan, who's not quite dead yet, until he catches a TV to the head. And at this point, I don't know if they're trying to make out, oh, he caught a TV to the head, he's dead, Stu's dead, or if they were just, making an homage. But either way, he's defeated. Then we get to see Mindy, who was stabbed only a couple of hours earlier, maybe not even a few hours earlier, come running down the sidewalk to meet with the rest of our cast and show that she's okay. We get news that Gail's okay, which, fine, I guess. And then we get news that Chad's okay. I love Mason Gooding. He did a great job in this movie, but really? As many knives as he caught, he's alive? Look, all I'm saying at this point is if you're gonna have Kirby get stabbed as much as she has, have fucking this guy get stabbed as much as he has, and at the end of these movies, these people, I guess, are completely fine without medical care, I'm saying Stu might still be alive. He might still be. And I'm not even on the side of Stu being alive. I think that motherfucker is dead after he got stabbed as deep as he did, as many times as he did, and as much blood as he lost. Even without the TV, I think he was pretty much going to die. And at this point, we've reached the ending. We see Sam looking at the mask, which is her father's mask, contemplating, does she take it with her? Does she leave it behind? And she drops it on the ground and walks away. And thus is the end of the film. Now, for Scream 7, they could probably pick it up right there and literally have someone run up and take the mask and continue the spree. Who knows? Who knows if it'll be a direct continuation, if it'll be, something entirely different, a few-year jump. All I'm saying is, seems like a good place to pick up on because, okay, you brought back all these props and costumes and masks and knives and all this stuff. They didn't get destroyed. They're still there. Will they have any other significance in the future, or is that our one time getting to see all these pieces again? Because as far as I can count, there should still be a couple of other killer masks out there outside of the ones that were left behind, if you're, talking about all 9. Anyways, there you have it. That's pretty much it. If you want to know my opinion, I really enjoyed this movie. There were a few things, though, I didn't like. Just some character flaws, certain line deliveries, but nothing too major. Overall, I really enjoyed this movie. It was incredibly fast-paced, though. I really think it could have benefited from an additional 15, maybe even 20 minutes of runtime. There's just some stuff I didn't see in this one that I kind of expected to see. One of which being the explanation of who the hell killed Dewey. I mean, come on, guys. That was one of the biggest things that people complained about with Scream 5, is that there's no way that little Amber sized up that much with the Ghostface costume and killed Dewey. But in this movie, we have the perfect explanation for how it could have been someone else. It could have been Richie's brother or sister at that point in time. Because after all, we do see the same mask that's used in those scenes in the subway train sequence. We already matched that mask from the trailers. I'm pretty sure it's the same one in the final cut, but we'll talk about that in a second. But, I mean, that just seems like it would have been so easy to be like, oh yeah, it wasn't Amber. She claimed the kill because she was taking the fall for another Ghostface. Because if people were already willing to finish Richie's movie, Jason and Greg, did they already know about it? Were they already fans of his? Because it does say that Richie inspired many others. So if Richie's the ultimate stab fan, and the ultimate fan, I guess, of the true crime that happened around these people, then, I don't know. Seems to me like there could have been more killers involved. And they very, very easily, with just a couple of minutes of screen time, could have been like, oh yeah, it was Ethan who did it. It was actually his brother who showed up as Ghostface to kill Dewey, thus giving meaning to the "it's an honor" thing. Granted, he would be the brother of the world's biggest stab fan. He obviously knew that his brother was a collector and made these movies and had this passion about it, so that would make sense. Plus, him being the one to slice Richie's arm, it would make sense that Richie would trust somebody that close to him. So that just seems like it would have been really, really easy to be like, oh, by the way, that thing that fans really, really hated so much in the last movie, let's fix it real quick, real easy. Oh yeah, I didn't talk about the cringy one-liner from the beginning. So, the one-liner from Ghostface, when Jason Carvey's like, what about Richie's movie? We gotta finish the movie. Ghostface is like, who gives a fuck about the movies? I mean, given that all three of our Ghostfaces were family members of the ultimate stab fan, who his entire purpose in the killings was to inspire another stab movie, like that was his entire motive, is that he wanted to provide more source material for the stab movies. Apparently he gave a fuck about the movies, and you cared enough about his stuff to buy him all these pieces, to make his collection what it is, and to support him even after he's dead. So it seems like he cared about the movies. Didn't care for that. I also didn't care for, I don't know what they're doing with Ghostface's voice changer. In the last movie, we had the red dot, it needed to be turned on. You can see the dot on the side. In this movie, Ghostface is using the voice changer, not over the phone, just in person. No red dot available this time. Didn't care for that as much. Another thing that I was a bit confused over is what are they doing with Ghostface's voice changer? In the last movie, they added the whole red dot on the neck thing. You turn it on, you can see the LED. In this movie, that's not needed. It's not shown. I don't know if they were just like, yeah, that's dumb, and they just didn't do it. Or maybe that specific Ghostface had such a specific style voice changer that it was unique to them. And maybe it was police technology, which would also explain another reason why it could be Richie's family. But that seemed weird, plus also just the whole use of the voice changer not being over the phone doesn't work as well for me. Because you should at least be able to hear the voice changer voice and kind of the actual killer's normal voice muffled underneath. Granted, that would make it a lot easier to figure out who's under the mask. Just effect-wise, I think that would work a little bit better. Because I think they kind of did that in Scream 1 and 2. Whenever they hold up the voice changer, you hear their voice and the voice changer version. What are the chances anybody's still watching this? I've been ranting for like an hour and a half over here. No telling how long it'll be once it's fully cut, but if you're watching this, let me know in the comment section down below. Because I'm just nitpicking this movie at this point. Things that were changed from the trailer. I did notice that the whole, there's a darkness inside of me, and that whole monologue from Sam to our psychiatrist, that was cut. That wasn't in the final cut of the film. The entire train sequence was actually changed. I noticed that for sure. When I watched it the first time, I noticed it. There was a bootleg 2018 Michael Myers in the original cut, and I don't know if that's the reason why this was reshot, but he was in the foreground. There was like a hockey mask in the background, a couple of people dressed as Us cosplayers, but now none of those characters are in the background. There is a Michael Myers mask, but it's like a Halloween 1 version, I think, by Trick or Treat Studios, so completely different mask. The setup of the trick-or-treaters, or lack thereof, honestly, in the train is very different. A Distortions Unlimited death mask was in the forefront of the crowd in the initial cut in the trailer. He's not there anymore. The only time you see the 2018 bootleg Myers and death in this movie is there's a quick shot when the Core 4 and some other trick-or-treaters are getting onto the train, you see it, and then when they're in the tunnel and they're in the dark and it's showing some very low light close-ups of different people's faces, you see one of the Distortions Unlimited death for like a split second. But other than that, everything inside of the train was different for sure. Everything facing our main actors is the same, so everything from that perspective, shooting everything behind them, is all the same as the trailer, but everything in the rest of the subway car is completely different, and that's for both cars. In the first trailer, we could even make out the 25th anniversary masks were used, and they were second run because they had blue dots. However, this time, there's ultra whites in the train. So I don't know what was reshot, why it was reshot. Ultimately though, Mindy getting stabbed was the same as it was in the trailer. Also, the whole monologue towards Gail over the phone about, that's where you're wrong, Gail, I'm different. That's not in the movie. There's just a lot of stuff that was changed, or maybe those things were shot entirely for promotional reasons and they were never intended to be used in the final cut. But it seemed like there weren't nearly as many trick-or-treaters in the final cut of the movie. They didn't really put any emphasis on the fact that it was Halloween. There is one mention of the fact that after the slayings of Jason and Greg, that now Ghostface mask sales are skyrocketing, and the way that it's told over the news is laughable, because I don't think that would happen in real life. If there's been so many slayings of people dressing up as Ghostface and killing people in public and in private over however many decades, I don't think anybody's going to get on the news and be like, John Wayne Gacy masks are on sale through the roof. They're going great. It's going to be a spooky Halloween out there. And say Ghostface masks, and that's essentially what the newscast was. But for them to be in New York and to be supposedly surrounded by best-selling Ghostface masks, it didn't seem like there were that many outside of the subway car scene. And that's something that I feel like was kind of really underutilized, because you could have made it feel really claustrophobic in the high-density populace of downtown New York, where there are so many people dressed up as Ghostface, and it's like, it could be literally anybody around me. I don't know, like, that felt a bit wasted, but hindsight's 20/20. Overall, though, I really enjoyed the film. Like I said, I know I'm sitting here nitpicking it to death, because I am a huge fan of the franchise. You know, all these little things don't really, like, mean a lot to me. It's not something that I'm gonna cry about, or I'm not gonna lose sleep over it. I just feel like there were a few missed opportunities in this movie with things that they set up and didn't use, as well as just some things character-wise that didn't really make a lot of sense. And also the whole part of it being, I'm different, this one's different, we're breaking rules, didn't really happen. Like, it kind of ended up being a lot of the same motives, a lot of the same. The only differences were the beheadings and the gun usage, and I mean, that's it. Also, the line about beheadings when they're talking about it, I don't even think I mentioned this scene. When they're at college having the, like, fountain talk, where they're like, you could be it, here's why, here's the rules of a franchise. They bring up beheadings, and there was an interview that I watched on the way home, and I think it was Mason Gooding. It's like, I can't believe, like, wait, I thought that line got cut from the movie. So even he was confused that the beheadings line made it in the final cut of the movie. So I don't know if Fun World had said something and they had to shoot a different version and that version didn't get used, or what's up, but clearly there was some confusion there because they thought it wasn't supposed to make the final cut. Okay, I gotta wrap this up soon. The camera just died. I've been filming for over 2 hours. Let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. I do have a few more complaints though. One of which being, yet again, on the motive side of things. So whenever Quinn fakes her death, Officer Bailey's like, can you believe how easy it was for me to show up just before the police arrived and swap it out with a new body, and a little bit of prosthetics and some fake blood will go a long way. What? Like, okay, out of everything else in this movie, anything that might be unbelievable, this is for sure the one. You mean to tell me that no DNA evidence would be done? How good of a prosthetic are we talking about, by the way? Is it that convincing enough that a bunch of police who have actually shown up and seen many dead bodies before are gonna go, yep, there's your daughter? And I think he even said fake blood. Wouldn't they be able to detect the fake blood? And even though it was a murder, usually there's autopsies anyway, so how would this work? And even if it did, what's Quinn's plan after this? Okay, I guess Ethan's still on grid. I guess Officer Bailey's still on grid, but now Quinn just disappears? Another thing that I felt was a missed opportunity is the way that they shot Billy Loomis in this movie. And I want to say this, regarding his CGI, in the last movie, a lot of people said it was terrible, a lot of people said it was great. Personally, I think it was pretty good for de-aging. This one, however, man, it just looked really, really off. And I mean, I think the way that they tried to hide this is by just showing him in a reflection, but even when they show him in the reflection, it's such a missed opportunity. we see Sam walk up to the glass case with Billy's costume in it, and she's staring at it, looking at the knife, and then she sees and hears Billy. Now, when it shows his reflection, it's like she's looking at the chest area of the robe. If the whole purpose of putting that costume in a glass case was so that she could see him in the reflection, why not just put Billy's face over the actual, like, blank face of the mannequin? I think that would have been a lot cooler. Maybe show a scene where it's Sam looking at the face of the mannequin, where it's missing the mask, obviously, and the reflection shows her face in it. Then we turn back to her reaction, then she can hear his voice. Then we pan back over, and now it's Billy's face, where the actual face would be. That would have been so cool. And that would have been an opportunity for us fans to actually see Billy Loomis in the Ghostface robe. But instead, they had to put that reflection a few inches lower. I don't know, it's not that big of a deal, but to me, cinematically, I think that would have been just so much cooler. There were some fun Easter eggs in this one. I probably did not catch them all, but one of my favorites, of course, was seeing Mojo Jojo walk up the stairs out of the subway when they're descending into the subway. Of course, reference to Roger Jackson. I want to say it was either the apartment complex that they were living in or the police station, but probably the apartment complex was called Milton, which is probably a reference to Milton from Scream 3. But yeah, there were a few more I wanted to mention, but I completely have forgotten them. Maybe I'll do another video once I've rewatched the film. Probably not, though. Kind of doesn't seem like it'd be worth it. But anyways, let's go ahead and wrap this up. I could talk about this thing all night. Overall, I had a great time in the theater. I think it was a fun movie. I will go see it again. As far as how I would rank it amongst the rest of the franchise, I'll probably have to do a ranking video at some point in the future, so if you guys are interested in that, let me know in the comment section down below. I do have a few problems with it. Some took away from the story more than others. Some are just tiny little nitpicky details that you're not going to care about unless you're somebody like me. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. If they don't show Miss Loomis as like the forced ghost Billy Loomis thing that they're doing, if they don't have Miss Loomis, the grandmother, show up, what a disappointment. Because, I mean, really, if you want to look at it, in many ways, Miss Loomis kind of kick-started this whole series of events. Not 100% her fault. Obviously, there's a lot of people, you know, Hank Loomis, who actually was cheating with Maureen Prescott. And then you've got Miss Loomis, who let a little bit of leaked to the press infidelity ruin her entire relationship with her family and her son. She walks out on her son Billy, which leads him to go on the spree that he did, and then she gets pissed off because he went on said spree and got killed in the process. She blames Sydney, but I mean, you could possibly even see it as she truly does blame herself, and that's what caused her to go crazy. Either way, I think Miss Loomis showing up and also having something to say to Sam would be really cool. If you're already giving us these visions, you may as well go all the way. And in this movie, it doesn't seem like Sam has really conquered her whole situation with Billy. She's still seeing those visions. At the end of it, she's definitely embraced her birthright and went full killer, which I gotta say, Melissa Barrera, covered in blood, wearing a Ghostface robe, very nice. But with how she and Tara are dealing with it, I feel like it would almost make sense to just have her become a Ghostface, and maybe we do get to see her descent into madness in the next movie or something, but I mean, it doesn't seem like she's getting any better. Anyways, I'm pretty much talking in circles at this point. If you guys have not seen the movie, go check it out. It is a ton of fun. I think it's going to be more fun in theaters. I have no clue what the 4D or 3D experience is like because nowhere around me offers that. But if any of you out there got to see the movie in 4D or 3D, let me know in the comment section down below. What was that like? Especially the 4D. I'm curious what they did. And with that being said, I love you all. Thank you for watching, and here's to Scream 7.